Hello and welcome to another episode. Today I spoke with Vanessa White, who is a master accredited relationship and divorce coach. And she has a whole lot of experience. Today we spoke specifically about how to maintain a healthy romantic relationship. It's mostly about techniques to show your partner how you love them and to make sure you get over arguments in a healthy way. But we also touch a little bit on relationships with children, with your friends, with your, not so much your parents, but I actually feel a lot of what we talk about is very relevant to that as well. Relationships with the people you care about, basically. So, this is a good one. Everyone is going to learn something from this. I really enjoyed it. And there's a few little techniques I'm going to take home with me. And I'm curious whether you will. Please let me know if you found this episode interesting. But without further ado, here is my episode with Vanessa White. So I want to hear all about healthy relationship maintenance stuff from you today. And I'm really curious. So what are some invisible efforts that people can make to show love that can often go unnoticed? And how can we become a bit better at noticing these and recognizing these?
Yeah, that's such a great place to start, actually, because it's often those small gestures that, like you say, go unnoticed, or we kind of forget sometimes, actually, that what they mean. And so remembering those and kind of understanding what they might be is really, really important because, you know, as we go through a relationship, the big kind of things like we have when we're sort of dating become less frequent. So those small gestures are really, really important. And I think it's quite important to go to kind of the languages of love for this one. I don't know whether you've ever heard of the languages of love before.
I have, but please do refresh my memory.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little tool, really. There's no kind of right or wrong, but it's just quite a useful little tool for people to be aware of, both of their language of love, but also of that of their partners. So there are 5 languages of love: physical touch, acts of service, gifts, words of affirmation, so things like I love you, and quality time. And so we all will have different languages of love to each other. It's not that you have to have the same one as your partner, but actually knowing or trying to think what your predominant one is, or your top kind of 2, and those of your partners is quite useful. And you can do little quizzes online. So it's quite a fun thing to do with you and your partner to kind of find out what they are. But actually, the way the little things that mean something to me or I might do for my partner, they may not recognize of small gestures of love because their language of love might be different. So, for example, if I always bring my partner a cup of tea in the morning in bed, which for me is showing that I love them. And obviously it's a small gesture, like you were saying at the beginning. I know that means I'm showing them love because it's kind of an act of service, if you like, one of the languages of love. But if my partner's language is not acts of service and it's more physical touch, say, that meaningful gesture that I'm giving of bringing a cup of tea to bed may just fall flat in terms of they'll appreciate it. Obviously, it's nice to have a cup of tea, but that gesture of love may not be so apparent. They may respond more to a kiss on the forehead when you bring the tea. So bring the tea still, but actually that little physical touch gesture, which is a small thing, but that little kind of, kiss on the forehead or just, something physical touching their arm as you put the tea down, that will mean much more to them than actually perhaps the tea. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so the difficulty would be if then your partner didn't know that. So I guess you have to do you have to really would it be a good idea to communicate this really openly and say, look,
Communication.
this is what I need?
Communication is, I mean, it's always up there for me. It's
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
I think, but it can be, it can be really a good thing to communicate about, understanding what these things are together. And actually, if you've never heard of these or you're not sure, then you can find all about it. It's very easy to find what they are, and actually to do a little quiz to work out what you both have. And then it can be quite a nice little discussion to be, oh gosh, actually, yeah, I recognise that I really like physical touch. That's how I know someone loves me.
Yes.
And then finding out from my partner, oh, actually theirs is, quality time together. And you may subconsciously kind of be aware of these things, especially if you've been together for a long time. You kind of know each other quite well. But actually understanding what that means. And sometimes when there's miscommunication, so I think I'm showing love to my partner, but they're just not really picking up on it, because our love language is essentially, I might not be saying I love you all the time, which is what they need to hear. They need to hear the words. But I might be mowing the garden, washing the car, bringing the tea in the morning, which is my way of showing love all the time, but I'm not saying that much I love you. So sometimes when there's kind of a mismatch and we think, does our partner still love us? Do they still, feel that way about us? Then it's good to have that conversation, because it could just be as simple as we're a bit mismatched there, and we've sort of forgotten what makes the other one feel loved, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think even though you say you can be mismatched, it doesn't mean you're mismatched as people.
Absolutely not.
You're still a good match. It's just that you have different styles, and you need to be aware that what rocks your boat isn't what rocks the other person's boat, to make that effort, I guess.
100%. This is not about, are we compatible as a couple? This is not about, are we in a healthy relationship? That is not what love languages is about. It's not about, that thing of, we shouldn't be together because we have different love languages.
We're not both hug people or both I love you people.
No, it's absolutely not. That is not about, looking at compatibility. The key is really, communicating how we need to feel love and how our partner does. And, actually that communication is the key. But yeah, absolutely. It's not about thinking, I like to hear the words and someone else likes physical touch, say, or a gift to feel loved. Oh my goodness, then we should be splitting up. Absolutely not. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
But understanding that just helps us to kind of focus how we do those little gestures that you're talking about, and, what actually means something to the other person as well as to ourselves. And often if someone is not showing us love in the way that we need it, unless they know what the issue is, they've got no way of kind of trying to be different for us.
Yeah, they don't know. Yeah,
No.
Yeah. They might be assuming, I really like acts of service, or I really like gifts. That's obviously how she's gonna love gifts.
Yes,
love
100%.
Yes.
So you keep buying gifts, bunches of flowers, coming home with a little bar of chocolate, which is all lovely. It's not about those things are wrong or they're bad, of course. But actually for somebody, all they're waiting for is to spend quality time with you of an evening, sat on the sofa where you're really engaged, like watching a program together or snuggled up together. And that's what they're really waiting for. Also, the thing with little gestures of love, people often think that, it needs a weekend away to kind of zhuzh things up a bit and make things seem, kind of buoyant again. But often it can just be the small gestures day to day that people are missing, that actually by understanding each other a bit better and understanding what those are, and being consistent with those, that actually can rekindle things if you feel like you're kind of a little bit distant at a period of time, or, you don't have the same connection perhaps at a particular point. It doesn't have to be big, expensive things to kind of think, we need to do that. Actually, it's often the small gestures that
And a
maybe have
small,
gone
perhaps more
awry.
consistent, small and
Yes.
consistent.
Yeah. And so it's
Yeah.
worth remembering that when, if people they feel they're going through a bit of a bit less connected with their partner,
Mm.
it doesn't necessarily need a holiday to Barbados. I mean, that would be
Yeah.
lovely, but it doesn't
Oh, yes.
necessarily need
Yes, yes.
those bigger things. Actually, it could be the day to day connection because you're both busy, or maybe one of you's got a new job, or maybe you've just had a baby. The
Yeah.
little things then sort of slide. And it's those things consistently which can often make the difference, not the bigger
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
maybe.
Wonderful. That's such a good tip, especially kind of being aware that your partner's language of love is most likely, potentially, different from yours, and to have a conversation. But I'm interested. So, I mean, most of all, we'll be talking about a more romantic relationship here. But do the languages of love also are they relevant for like family relationships and friendships and all of that?
Yes, absolutely they are because and it's actually it can be really really helpful, parents with their children, you know even with quite young children, I mean not with babies obviously, but with children who start being a little bit more independent, you can start to see what they respond to, and whether they're someone who the hug kind of does everything for them, or a little gift of something, even a small thing can be the thing that turns it around. So it can be really useful. And obviously, as our children get older, it can be really, really good at helping us understand our children as a parent, and vice versa as well. And yeah, also with other family members. Because if you feel like there's something missing in the connection, or something is, you're not quite sure, you can't even put your finger on it with somebody, it it can be really useful just to think about this. So thinking you know what yours is, and actually looking for clues and signs, even if you don't want to say anything to the other person, which may be in another kind of relationship, a platonic relationship, you may not want to have that discussion about languages of love, but actually
Yeah.
you can use it
Yeah.
even if you don't have that discussion, because it just can help you find that way in with somebody, or maybe understand where things are maybe not kind of as cohesive as they might be.
Yes. And I can imagine, I mean, they're called languages of love, but really it's languages of connection and language of appreciation. So with a friend, I think if you know that their language of love or whatever is words of affirmation, maybe essentially it would be the same in the friendship way, kind of, oh, I really appreciate your friendship. You're such an amazing friend. Saying
Yeah.
those kind of things, not like I love you so much. Or sometimes friends
No,
can say I love you to each other, and that's also
you
perfectly
can say I
fine.
love you, but
Yeah.
it absolutely, you're so right. It's not about, yeah, those things where you say, God, you're such a great friend, or, we've known each other so long, I really value you. It doesn't have to even be that, in the kind of I love you, or, you're amazing. It can be just the words of recognition
Yeah.
that somebody is valued and you think a lot of them. And so the words of affirmation can be anything like that, where you're appreciated through words, I suppose.
Yeah. 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 Very interesting. And I was just thinking about my little boy when you said your children, because I like clearly my language of love is touch. Like I'm really touchy. I'm a hugger. I'm like one of those huggers that people might get annoyed with. But I'm always like stroking his hair and like kind of stroking his little leg, kind of saying I'm here for you. I love you. Um, but I don't think he's a touch person actually, because when I say, "Can I have a cuddle?" he'll kind of give me like a half-hearted cuddle with like an awkward shoulder. He doesn't really. So that's interesting that it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the same. Yeah.
No, and it is, and you kind of think, gosh, how can how can you see that in children, particularly younger children? Um, but you can see as they start, once they're a little bit more independent and moving around, so they can kind of make a few little choices even when they start. Um, you can start to see it, because you do see the things. And if you're not quite sure, particularly with a child, even an older child actually, test them out. So if you're not quite sure and you think, I'm not really sure what my child's, and if you don't want to have that conversation with them, which you may not want to for whatever reason, you can always test them. You know, if physical touch doesn't seem to kind of float their boat, then see if words of affirmation do. See if little gifts, and again, we're not talking you've got to go and buy them a big toy or anything, even just small gestures of giving them a little note, or, you know, buying them a little something in the shop, small, or bringing something in from the garden for them and giving it to them. It doesn't have to be big things, but test out, you know, what's it like? Is it quality time they're looking for, where I am not on my phone, not on my laptop, and actually we sit for 5 minutes and reading, or just being there, where they have got all my attention, and that really seems to invigorate them. Test out the languages of love with them, and you'll see where maybe they really resonate. So you can see it. So if you're not sure, have a little go and see what they, and if they then resonate with everything, I mean, you've got a bit of a problem in terms of, because you can't really decipher. We will all have more than one as predominant. We will have usually one or two that are predominantly. We flit in with others. You know, it's not saying, if, for example, acts of service is my love language, it doesn't mean I don't equally appreciate someone saying, I love you, or buying me a small gift, or whatever. But the thing that really gels with me, that I need to feel loved, is the predominant one or two. So we would normally, you would have predominantly one or two, but the others, it doesn't mean that you just ignore them and they never are appreciated. But definitely the ones we have as predominant ones are generally the ones we show love to other people with. And that's where you have to be careful, because obviously we're showing love from our main love language, which obviously if it's not our partner or our friend or our child's, it may just miss sometimes. That's
it
why.
falls on deaf ears. Yes. Yeah, that's super interesting stuff for people to think about, especially if they had never heard of the languages of love. Then I'm sure people are thinking, oh, okay, that's an interesting one to go and have a think about.
It is interesting, and definitely in relationships, if you feel that, you know, there's just a bit of distance maybe from your partner, and you've been together a while and you've never kind of explored this or even thought about it, it can be really quite enlightening and a really great tool with which to communicate maybe your needs a little bit more, which people maybe struggle with sometimes, to just bring up my needs to our partner, especially, you know, maybe if we've been with them a while. So it can be a really useful tool to start that sort of conversation.
Absolutely. I love it. Now, going back to the romantic relationships a bit more, how can someone distinguish between if something is like a rough patch, or if it's a sign that it's truly not a great relationship, or something is seriously wrong? And it's a bit more of a negative spin on things, but it's interesting to talk about.
It is, because, you know, healthy relationships go through ups and downs naturally. You know, a healthy relationship does not mean that we never have, you know, hit bumps in the road, that we never get to those potholes and think, oh God, actually things are really difficult. You know, that is part of a healthy relationship, actually, because it's never always going to be smooth sailing. But so I think it's a really, really great question, actually. And I think, you know, it's like anything, if you're going along and you are in a bit of a rough patch and you just feel like things are not so good, I suppose, you know, obviously communication is key, but if you're looking at kind of the key signs, it's really, are you both willing to work at it and what's required? So, you know, if we are feeling a bit disconnected from our partner, or we're disappointed in them for some reason, or, you know, we're not feeling great in ourselves, so we're now taking it out on our partner. It's actually nothing to do with our partner, maybe, the actual root cause of the little hiccup. It's actually, you know, are we both willing to work on it? Because obviously for longevity of relationships, if you hit a bump in the road and a rough patch and actually one of you is not willing to work on it, then that is a totally different matter, in terms of getting some more help, maybe some professional help may be really beneficial then. But if you both are committed and you both love each other and you're in this kind of tricky time, talk to each other. And I would really urge you to kind of do it, not when your emotions are really heightened, or you feel angry with your partner about something, or you feel not in a great place. Actually, you want to try and communicate, particularly about difficulties you're facing, when things are quite calm, not when you're in the middle of quite a heated disagreement, or you both haven't spent any time together all of Saturday because one of you's off with one child there, one of you's off doing that. Then the first time you see each other, you're trying to navigate this tricky patch. That's not going to be the most productive time to do it. So when there's a calm time, when you're both in a relatively good place, and maybe plan for it and say, look, things aren't great at the moment, and can we have a talk about it, so that you're not springing it on the other one either, which then immediately is like, oh, I'm not ready. I don't want to talk about our relationship or what's going on now. So just a little bit of planning, be compassionate and kind and caring when you're talking, about a rough patch. Show that you're both sort of invested in the relationship and willing to do the work, and see it as a rough patch, not a massive disaster that's going to end the relationship. If it is a blip, a pothole, something just to kind of get through, which we all have and is totally normal, see it as that, rather than building it into this big issue that then becomes something else when it never needed to. So, it's just a blip. What's actually going on here? How do we feel? Are we both still committed? Do we want to work on it? And be patient and understanding to the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a good point, because I'm sure it can be, sometimes it can happen that you might over dramatize something and actually it becomes a bigger thing than it even had to be. It's the end of the relationship, and actually it was a rough patch or a misunderstanding, or you're both run down. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Things can be blown out of all proportion, and we have to be careful of that. When it doesn't mean then still the relationship's going to end, but it can be very difficult then, because then it becomes about something else other than the actual original issue. And that's when it then becomes tricky and sticky, because you're kind of not quite sure what you're actually trying to find common ground on, or why there was actually an issue. That kind of almost goes into the past. So it's kind of see it for what it is, and be kind to each other and kind to yourself when you're trying to deal with those issues.
Yeah. And the thing you said about not having a discussion like that when you're heated, it's so important. I mean, I can think of so many examples of myself and my partner or my husband, when maybe you are already in an emotional state, and the stuff that comes out of your mouth just doesn't make sense. You're not rational. It just it's never the most productive way of speaking. So
no, and it's hard, because when you're in that heated, you then want to be coming out, and actually no, that is when you have to just pull back and then actually talking about those issues at a separate time.
This is a little bit beside the point, but just goes through my mind. Really, ideally, if anyone wants a relationship chat, they should do a yoga practice first. Get all grounded and chilled in their relaxed nervous system, and then go have the chat.
We're laughing about it, but actually there is real truth in terms of that calm outlook and calm feeling, because we're not productive and we don't achieve the best results when we are heightened, whether that's stress, whether that's tiredness, whether that's, anger, whatever the emotion is. When we're in a heightened state, we are never going to achieve the best when we're trying to have a discussion, whoever actually
Yeah.
that's with.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is, you're very right, actually.
Take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Now, that's all super interesting, definitely. Kind of relevant. What if, so about showing emotions, what if one of the partner, one person in a relationship is kind of suppressing their negative emotions for fear of creating a fight, kind of not not wanting to explode with anger or annoyance. Just yeah, what kind of situation would that create if they're trying to keep the peace, but they're not actually, communicating how they feel?
Yeah, and I mean, it happens a lot, doesn't it? I would say that suppressing our emotions, whatever that is, in the short term might keep the peace in the short term, but you're heading for long term issues if you do that,
Mm,
I would say, because there's lots of reasons why we might suppress our emotions or not communicate as openly and honestly as we might want to. And, a lot of that is often born from compassion, actually, because we don't want to hurt the other person or we don't want to upset them or, so a lot of that where we hold things in and we don't say what we really want to say is born out of compassion.
yeah.
Sometimes it's born out of fear. So if we are
Mm,
frightened that, particularly in the early stages of a relationship where we really are liking this person and we want to really keep it building, we don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize where we're at because it's going really well and, we're loving the kind of journey that we're on. So maybe we don't say something because we don't want to jeopardize that. But definitely bottling up emotions in any context, it does not work in the long term because at some point those emotions are going to come out in some way because it just does. It might not be for a long time, it might not be in a way you expect,
mm,
or it just feeds this kind of thing inside us of kind of slight annoyance and slight bitterness to our partner and just negative emotions towards our partner, which we don't want to be carrying. So I would definitely say having a conversation, which seems to be what I'm saying in everything, but it is so, so important. And again, if we're frightened of saying something, either we don't want to upset our partner or we don't know how to communicate it. Again, coming from a calm place of, rather than kind of you did this, you did
mm.
that. I'm really annoyed with you. When you did that, you really, really annoyed me. And, it's all you. That immediately, I mean, we know when we're on the receiving end of that, you're like, oh gosh,
Ooh, defensive. Yes.
yes. So actually saying what is the emotion you're feeling? So the thing you're trying to hold in, what is it? Naming it and saying, I feel sad when shout at me when you get home from work and you've had a really bad day, for example.
Yeah.
That's quite a sort of, but actually naming your emotion. I feel X, or I
Yeah.
felt really angry when you came in and you just dumped all your wet football kit all over the floor. That made me feel really angry.
Yeah.
Please, is there any way you can put it in the utility room or put it in the wash even better, or, whatever. So naming your emotion, coming from the I, and asking for what you would like instead is
Okay.
a useful kind of construct of conversation,
Yeah.
rather than just throwing out this barrage of words. You did this, you
You're
that, you the
always.
other. Yes. Oh, when you get into the territory of, oh, you always do that. That is like, no, hang on a minute. They don't always do it, but when you say that kind of thing, it can really hit hard with somebody.
Because it's like a value judgment, isn't it? It's
It
like a
is.
character judgment.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. So having a construct of, coming from the I, naming what you are feeling, rather than just this vague kind of, they get the impression you're not happy with them, but they don't really understand what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And then how would you like it to be different?
Yes. Give them the tools.
Yes, is helpful, because then they can be like, actually, yeah, I can do that. Or they can give you the reason why that's not possible for them, because then you are actually having a discussion. It's not about everyone always has to agree with everyone and be like, oh yeah, well, okay. There may be reasons why the other person can't do whatever you would like them to do, but you're then giving an opportunity to have a dialogue, rather than one of you firing out a load of hand grenades in this sort of rage, and the other one on the receiving end, and then throws out a load more. But you're not ever going to achieve anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Definitely. Really practical tip, actually, to think about, this makes me feel this way. And maybe, if you did it this way, that would really help me, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Really good. Now, what about talking a bit about anger? So what about if if your partner is angry, but not necessarily at you? How can you support each other to work through the difficult emotions, to be like, not to like take on the emotion or to like make it worse? How can you be that supportive side to help the other?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because obviously it depends sometimes. Initially, are they angry with me? So is my partner, is the anger about me and something I've done or not done?
Yes. Well,
Or
maybe
are
let's
they,
talk into two scenarios. Maybe first the anger at the other partner, and maybe then if a partner is just angry, not just at a different reason. I'd be
yeah,
very
so
interested to hear your take.
yeah, so if our partner is angry with us, and I think that the first thing is, it's about that thing again of, this is your partner, this is the person you love. So, we want to speak to them that with, you might be very angry with something they've done, which we do get angry with things because they are going to do things that upset us, or we are to them. That's not a bad thing, but how we deal with that is important. So, actually, again, understanding, if my partner's angry with me, what have I done? What is it you're angry with? Trying to get to the nub of the actual issue is really useful, because again, if you're just firing out rage, into the room and directed at me, I'm not really understanding. Yes, I understand you're angry, but I can't do anything to either express why I've done what I've done, or to try and help calm the situation down. So we want to try and avoid just this firing out stuff. Be a bit more specific. What has the other person done? But again, coming from a compassionate point of view, not just firing off insults and kind of nastiness, which we can tend to get into when we're angry, obviously. But telling them what they've done, and then listening. We're not great at listening to our partners, and sometimes, that is what it takes. Sometimes it can be
Yeah,
as simple
listening.
as listening to what they're saying, because if they're actually telling us why they're angry with us, and they are really genuinely communicating quite well, they're angry, but they're telling us why, but we're not really listening, we're just hearing anger, anger, anger. Again, that can just inflate the whole situation. So listen to what your partner is saying, and then take a breath and respond. And, it's about saying, I hear what you're saying, actually. I recognize why you might feel angry with me. I don't particularly agree. You don't have to, again, it's not about agreeing with everything. You can say, you're validating them. You're validating the fact they're angry. Yes, I hear you're angry, and I can understand why you perhaps feel angry. I don't agree with your view. This is why I did what I did, or why I didn't turn up on time, or whatever it is. But I do understand. And look, I really appreciate you telling me, and I will try and do better next time, or whatever it is, or can we make a different plan next time because it was too tight on time, or whatever it is. You can then find a way forward, so you don't get into that same repetitive pattern. So it is about, that being clear why someone is angry. And then on the receiving end of that, listen to what they're actually saying. Don't make it up in your head just
Mm,
by what you're thinking.
yes, that's so important because I'm sure as soon as someone's angry, the other person will get defensive and make up their own story in their head about why the other person's angry.
100%, because very often when someone's angry at us, particularly if they're very shouty, I mean, we just switch off. Not
Mm,
because we're trying to be rude, but very often we're not hearing then, because we're
yeah.
either shocked that they're shouting at us, or we're angry then that they're shouting at us, and we switch off totally from what they're trying to communicate. Um,
Yes.
and there is a thing about kind of anger and conflict in relationships. And I think, recently George Clooney was saying how him and his wife Amal have never been angry together. They've never had an argument. Um, and that's really interesting because, you know, arguing is different from disagreeing. Anger is the emotion we feel.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, conflict is and disagreement is part of a healthy relationship, whoever you are. Even if it's just disagreeing what colour you want to paint the kitchen. One wants blue, one wants white. That's a disagreement. Doesn't mean you have to be
Yes.
angry and but actually we don't ever agree with everything with our partner. So there is
Oh,
going to be
absolutely. Yeah.
disagreement. But how I might handle the disagreement, I might be an angry person, so I will be angry when I'm disagreeing with my partner. Whereas my partner might just be someone who handles conflict by trying to avoid it. So they'll want to leave the room and just have a moment. And so again, it's these kind of differing ways of handling those disagreements and conflicts and arguments, if you like, and understanding how we each do that can be really, really beneficial. Again, there's no right or wrong. We're not
Yeah.
talking about toxicity or abuse here. We're talking about in healthy relationship
Okay.
dynamics.
Yes.
There's no
Yes.
right or wrong. If someone is quite shouty, um, it doesn't mean they're wrong. And, the best way of doing it is to go away into a corner and just kind of think about it. It just is different. The more we can understand that, and then the more we understand how we like to resolve a conflict. Some people like to stay in the room and shout it through until we get to a resolution, or we just worn out and then we just stop. Other people actually want to sit and really talk about it. Other people want to go to bed and sleep on it, and we'll talk about it then in the morning. There's lots of different ways we do it. So again, those sort of understandings of our partner can be really, really beneficial.
Yes. As long as we get to the root cause, like what actually was it that was making you angry? However you get there.
Understanding that is key, because again, like we were talking earlier, actually sometimes what you find is that the thing you start disagreeing with about, or being angry about, if then you don't like the way your partner is responding to you, or how they handle that, or whatever, or how they try and resolve it, that then becomes the issue, not the original thing that
Yeah.
you actually were arguing about or angry about. So again, these things in relationships can move on quite quickly and without intention to something quite different. And you never resolve the original thing, and you then are angry about something else. And that's where we have to be really careful and really, considered about how we handle these things, how we listen to our partner, and how we're really clear about what is going on for us.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's all very, very useful. Thank you. I want to move on to something a little bit more positive, romantic, maybe. So, thinking about a romantic relationship, perhaps people who are super busy, they might have some children, they've got jobs, they've got 100 and a million things going on. How how do we keep that romantic part of the relationship alive when we're both so run down. There's nappies, there's work, there's all sorts of things. Any tips?
Oh, I love romance. I think it's like
Yay.
it's really important. I think, yeah, I'm a real romantic, so I'm well into this. I think it's so important because romance is the difference between like a friendship and a relationship, really. I mean, obviously, sex is part of that, I guess, in a way, but we're not romantic with our friends. But actually with our partner, romance is one of the key things that differentiates that relationship. So it is really, really important to keep that alive. And actually that's one of the things that goes quickest when everything else is stressful and chaotic, like you said. And I would say, romance isn't about candles and roses. It's about intention. So the intention to be romantic, which kind of doesn't sound that romantic, but actually, if we always kind of make excuses of like, oh, I need to do a candlelit dinner to be romantic. Oh, but I haven't got any candles and I haven't got any matches. And actually we've just got, the dregs of yesterday's dinner in the fridge. So, that I'll just shove that romantic idea. Actually, it's not about that. The fact is, how can we make it romantic, even if we have no candles, no matches, and last night's dinner in the fridge? What can I do to make that special? Even just doing that for your partner. So if your partner normally cooks the dinner, actually saying, look, I'm going to get it all together. You sit down or you go and have a lovely bath and I'm going to put the meal together and then we're going to sit, the children are in bed. And yeah, it's not the most romantic setting, but that intention to do something for your partner because you recognise they've had a hard day and you just want to, that is romantic. So it's the intention to do it. Little things, again, sort of, if you're very super busy and you don't have a lot of time to connect, and when you do get home, the children are then needing putting to bed and things like that, little texts during the day, little flirty texts, just little connecting texts that are not necessarily about, oh, can you make sure the chicken's out of the freezer for tonight? Or can you make sure the football boots are by the door? Because that's what we tend to get into when we're texting our
very
partner.
functional. Yes.
Very functional, very much, please can you do this or can you do that? That, and people think, oh yeah, we text all day. But actually, you can make that romantic. Yes, you still need to send the text saying, please can you put the football boots in the bag or whatever. But actually, send the odd little text just saying, I love you, nothing else. Or, just a heart emoji. I mean, that takes literally less than a second to do.
Yeah.
Or, I can't wait to see you tonight. Or, whatever is your kind of thing. But just those little texts that are nothing to do with parenting or household or food or, but actually just shows you're thinking about that person as your spouse, as your partner, as your lover, as your someone you really value. And I think that's really important.
That's amazing. That is, and it's so easy, like thinking about it. It's not rocket science. It's like, just send a little, when you're thinking of someone, send a little lovely little text and do the little things.
Yeah, and and people think, again, it's that sort of romance has got to be a trip to Paris is romantic. Yes, of course that's romantic. Yes, candlelit dinners are romantic, all those things. But romance for me is not about the cost or the size of the gesture. It's actually, it's showing you value the other person, you love them, and your intention is to make them feel special, even if it's in a tiny, tiny way. Have a thing that, every Wednesday night or whatever, you don't watch TV and you actually just sit and you have that time and you talk about something, or you have something specific that you want to do with that time. And again, it's not about going out, because if you've got young children, it's hard to both go out together. But it's building that connection. And I think romance is about showing how you value the other person as your partner, as your lover, more than just a friend, more than just the mother of your children, or the father who does all the jobs around the house. Yes,
Yeah,
those things are important in life and in relationship, but romance is different to that. But it could be really small things that don't cost money.
I love that. Thank you. That's a brilliant message. Um, and I think that can be maybe, well, I'm looking at the time. That's a wonderful
I don't know
note
what the time is.
speaking for quite a while. That's a wonderful way to finish. But before we do, there's a few personal questions I would like for you to answer. I ask this from of every guest who comes on, and very, very personally, it doesn't have to be about relationships, but it's just so everyone can realize that you're a human being like all of us, and you're not perfect. No one's perfect. What is your guilty pleasure?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can actually name only one. To be
Oh,
honest,
name a few if you want.
probably
Go for it.
I'm a guilty pleasure kind of girl, I
I
think.
like it. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, mine would be definitely involve sometimes time on my own. So I'll go and lock myself away and actually just spend a bit of time on my own where I don't, my children are older, but just go in my room for 15 minutes, not in purpose to do anything specific, lie on my bed, actually just have time away, which feels to me like a guilty pleasure because I'm very, very busy and someone is always demanding something of me. I have to say, kind of, Married at First Sight is a guilty pleasure of mine, which I know is kind of
Yeah.
connected to my work, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy it. I enjoy the kind of, it gets me a bit hot under the collar sometimes when I see the
Yeah.
dynamics going on, but I just enjoy that, and I think it's frivolous
Yeah,
and
so for anyone else who doesn't know, it's a television program about dating. Like people meet
yes.
each other and they're matched up and then they get married eventually, hopefully.
No,
Yes.
they get married straight away. Yeah, but
Oh, okay, okay.
they first time they meet is at the altar. So
Right.
it's unrealistic. Hence, it's kind of frivolous, very frivolous. But you do see a lot of relationship dynamics, which are very interesting about how we do relate to our partners. But yeah, it's quite an extreme kind of thing because they meet at the
Yes.
altar and they've never met before, they've never seen each other, they
Yes.
don't know each other. So yeah, that is a guilty pleasure. Um,
Before
yeah.
you mention another one, I want to just match yours because since the last time we spoke, I have been looking at Love Island in a completely different way.
Have
Um,
you?
yeah, so obviously, I have a 6-month-old baby. I've now become too busy to watch it, but in the early days, when you're sat down a lot with a baby on your lap, I watched about 3 seasons this time round. And I was looking at it through your lens. From the last time we spoke, I was thinking, oh, that person is a bit of a people pleaser because he's saying this to that person and this to that person. Let's see how that pans out. And it doesn't work out very well. So I was kind of thinking about the relationship dynamics, and I thought it's really educational, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had that conversation. It was a really
Yes. Yeah.
interesting conversation last time, and I think it's for these things. I mean, it's hard for me because my world and my whole kind of working environment is to do with relationships. The positives and the negatives in relationships, and it's such a kind of big part of, I suppose, who I am in a
It's
way.
your passion. Yes.
And I suppose I'm not watching them in the same way maybe someone else is. Maybe I'm a bit, I don't know, but I'm a normal
You're
person like
analytical.
anyone else. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
suppose I have knowledge where I've seen a lot of people and I have, learned expertise and things. So I see some of the red flags, but also some of the really lovely things that you see that are actually positive relationship dynamics. Um, so yeah, I probably come from that, but I'm a person still at the end of the day, and you love that kind of the bit of drama as well. But they are, you do learn things from them, which sounds probably a bit unbelievable, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Yes. All right. Wonderful. Well, I have one more question for you. Can you tell the listeners what you do and how people can find out more about you and potentially if they feel that they want some of your advice?
Yes, of course. So I actually am a relationship and divorce coach, and I help people at all stages of relationships, separation, divorce, wanting to get into new relationships, wanting to start dating, anything kind of in that, parenting with an ex-partner. And I have a specialism in domestic abuse as well, so I have quite a lot of knowledge around that area. So yeah, anything in that relationship space. And I am available for appointments. You can find me on my website, which is www.vanessawhite.co.uk. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and
Wow.
YouTube, and I put some videos up, just little videos about relationship issues or things that I get asked. So yeah, you can find me in all of those places.
Perfect. Yes, I'll put all those details in the show notes. So if anyone's
Thank
interested, they
you.
can just go and look that up and find the link. Fantastic. And you do work with people online as well, don't you?
I do. I work
Yes.
with people online and in person. I work with men and women actually, and I have clients all over the country, and in America actually now. And so
All over the
yes, I
world.
will.
Well done.
I'm
Yeah.
global, yeah, you could say. But yeah, thank you. I will see clients in whatever way is most appropriate for them. So yes, however they want
Yeah.
to, and please approach me and talk to me. And if I'm not the right person to help you, I would tell you. But if you're not sure, then have a chat. There'd be no obligation. But yeah, to see if I can help you with whatever you're going through.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, Vanessa, I think that is it for today, but I'll definitely have you on in a future podcast episode. Maybe next time we'll delve a bit deeper into the breakup side of things. You've got so much
Yeah.
expertise there as well. But for now, my baby is waiting for me, so I think I've got to cut this one off. But it's been such a pleasure. I've really enjoyed our chat, and thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me. And yes, I would love to come back anytime. I really love our conversations. You're such a wonderful, warm, kind host. So thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, and you.
So that was my chat with Vanessa White. How interesting was that? Well, I'm going to answer my own question. I thought it was interesting. I hope you did too. Whether it's about your romantic relationship or maybe friends or other loved ones, maybe your parents, the stuff she talks about, especially all the love language stuff, the conflict resolution, figuring out the core reason why someone might be angry at you, all that stuff is so good. It's kind of, it goes towards emotional intelligence. If you can express the emotions and work through them and work together with other people. Good stuff. I like it. So I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and if you think this episode is relevant to anyone you might know, please go ahead and send them the link to this episode. That might be really useful for them. And it's really useful for me too, just to get the word out about my podcast. And finally, you would do me a huge favor by giving this podcast a little rating and review on whatever app you're listening this on. Maybe it's Spotify, maybe it's Apple Podcasts, and maybe it's YouTube. So whatever you're listening on, please rate and review or leave a little comment. I would love that. And the algorithm will love that and show my podcast to a few more people. So thank you. Without further ado, I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'll see you next week with another episode. Take care.